And I will say it again, fundamental fairness. In the absence of fundamental fairness, we experience a cascade of deteriorating conditions. The erosion of trust, the weakening of social cohesion, alienation, marginalization, the legitimacy of authority diminishes, cynicism and disengagement grow, and ultimately, people abandon civic participation altogether. Fundamental fairness, Mr. Hochman, that's all we ask. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. As always, we welcome your feedback.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. It is Tuesday, all across the world. And one more insulting day from the President of the United States. Donald Trump welcomed the Prime Minister of Canada into the White House today. And just like he did Vladimir Zelensky, he insulted him right before the press. Talked about what the future held for Canada before they even began their meetings to discuss mutual relationships, diplomacy, trade, opportunity, a shared border that spans the entire continent. Donald Trump chose to use the opportunity to insult him. And I think future world leaders can probably expect the same thing from Donald Trump, that he is going to insult them. And right before the Prime Minister entered the office, he issued a tweet that literally set the tone for the entire summit. It's hard to imagine that anything good can come from it because that's the President of the United States. Unlimited constitutional authority, according to the Supreme Court, essentially, but no moral authority. But that was not the Republic on September 17th, 1787. While it was for white males only, they believed, whatever white male morality was, that it would be an office of high moral authority, but limited constitutional authority. Today, our very special guest is Reverend Teresa Terry Hoard Owens. She's the General President, Minister, and President of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada. She is the first person of color, second woman to lead the denomination. Since her election in 2017, Reverend Hoard Owens' ministry actively reflects the disciples' priority of being an anti-racist church, being a movement for wholeness, welcoming all of the Lord's children to the table as God has welcomed us. Her exhortation to the church is, let's be the church we say we are. It is in being who we say we are that we are actively bear witness to God's limitless love for all. In addition to collaborative service with the ministries that comprise the Disciples Justice Ministries, she's been active in the leadership in the Poor People's Campaign and other ecumenical and interfaith collaboratives, including the Faith Table. In keeping with the Disciples' historic commitment to Christian unity, she serves in leadership at the National Council of Churches as the treasurer of the governing board and member of the World Council of Churches Central Committee. A descendant of one of the oldest African-American free settlements in Indiana and a disciple since a young adult, Reverend Hoard Owens earned her bachelor's degree in government with a minor in African American studies from Harvard University. Her resume is extensive, and we will be talking about some of it over the course of the program, but I want to take this opportunity to welcome Reverend Teresa Hord Owens to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Good afternoon, Congressman. It's always good to be with you. Thanks for having me today.
Reverend, it is a pleasure to have you back, both in part because of your official responsibilities, but because of the leadership that you are demonstrating across our country, across our world at this very critical hour. And there's so much intersection between your leadership in both Canada and the United States, but also your work with Reverend Dr. William Barber in the Poor People's Campaign. Recently, as we all know on the station, because we have covered it and we've talked about it extensively, and certainly we will talk about it when we come forward, he was arrested along with other ecumenical leaders in the capital of the United States, challenging the president's budget, a budget that turns its back on the poor, that turns its back on health care for all Americans, that turns its back on the United States Agency for International Development, feeding poor people and providing them with vaccinations and critical medical care across our world. In a real sense, Reverend Hord Owens, if we didn't know it before, we know it now. America's like the Dutch boy in international affairs. When she has her finger in the dike, she holds the entire planet together. But when she pulls her finger out of the dike, the wall comes tumbling down and the entire world struggles and suffers. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, we're going to have an amazing conversation with Reverend Teresa Hord Owens, an amazing figure in American public, political, and religious life. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580. If you missed our KBLA Talk 1580 Town Hall, the Altadena Eden Fire, 100 Days and Counting, you missed an evening of reverence, reflection, and reality.
You got to live in the reality because this is it. Every day you wake up, is this my life? Don't stay in denial because yes, it is. Don't stay in bargaining where you're praying for a miracle. And if it wouldn't have happened, then this is what I would have done. It did.
Our panel participants kept it real. Really real.
I think, number one, it's amazing to me how we ignore systemic racism in our community. And as a people, we've apologized for so much. But when will we stop apologizing for what we have paid for? Because the truth of the matter is we paid for this.
You can always count on KBLA Talk 1580 to give it to you straight, no chaser. When you love folk, you tell them the truth. Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down.
Olay Indulgent Moisture Body Wash.
It's me, Olay Indulgent Moisture Body Wash. I see those dry elbows, baby. But don't worry, get moisturized right in the shower. So hydrated you can skip the lotion after.
Don't wanna see it dry no more. Skin so moisturized with body wash.
Look at you now. No more dry skin. Your skin gets the moisture it craves with
Olay Indulgent Moisture Body Wash.
Small businesses are the heart of America. But you don't have to go it alone. As the nation's largest nonprofit resource of expert business mentoring, SCORE has helped millions of entrepreneurs build their businesses for free. Get the connections, education, and guidance you need with SCORE. We're ready to help. Find a mentor today at score.org.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Before we took our first break, or we came forward, I was sharing with our audience, Reverend Hord Owens, your relationship with Reverend Barber. We share that relationship. We share the Moral Mondays and the movement that he has been leading, that you have been co-leading with him. Will you share with us, in light of his arrest, where we are, where the movement is going, and what's next?
You know, this is as you well know, Congressman Jackson, this has been just a devastating 100 plus days. The real issue before the Moral Monday movement, led by Repairs of the Breach, Poor People's Campaign, Bishop Barber, it's an ecumenical interfaith movement. In early March, the Repairs of the Breach issued a high-stakes moral analysis report, which you can find at breachrepairs.org. And it highlights what is actually in the budget proposal that's being discussed on Congress. Trillions of dollars of cuts that will touch everything from Medicare to SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program for children, threats to Social Security. What the Moral Monday movement is doing at this point is starting, and actually yesterday, there were 5 people who were arrested yesterday for simply praying aloud in the Capitol, calling on our lawmakers, calling on God to move the hearts of these lawmakers for justice, mercy, and peace. So every Monday, every first Monday of the month, there will be both prayer and then a march really to the Capitol to continue to not only pray, but then to present these legal or policy recommendations. Bishop Barber always says, let's not just be loud. We need to be loud and accurate, loud and right. And so the Institute for Policy Studies has partnered with Repairs of the Breach, and the policy data that they share is well researched, it's valid, and I encourage people, we're encouraging at least 1,000 ministers across the country to take the work of that report and begin to incorporate a biblical and moral analysis of these issues in their preaching at least one Sunday a month, so that we can educate the people about why this legislation is potentially so dangerous, why it is indeed immoral legislation that's being proposed, and for faith leaders of every stripe and color to unite and show our solidarity in opposing legislation that will hurt the most marginalized and vulnerable in our society.
I am so proud of the Moral Mondays movement, the Repairers of the Breach, and the extraordinary leadership that Reverend Barber has been showing. He shared with us when he was on our program that he went back to Washington with Reverend Jesse Jackson to that location, that Resurrection City, that Poor People's Campaign that Dr. King in 1968, in the middle of a presidential campaign, sought to change Democratic and Republican priorities to focus on the poor. And Reverend Barber shared with Reverend Jackson on that occasion that that's where he wants to begin. He wants to pick up right there where Dr. King left off. And so now we're at that point where I believe it says in the Bible, where your treasury is, or where your heart is, your treasury is supposed to be. You know the quote I'm looking for.
Right. Where your treasury, your heart is.
That's right. I'm supposed to know that. And I'm so proud that Reverend Barber has decided to use nonviolent direct action to get our attention on how important it is that we follow the money in the chaos. Reverend Howard Owens?
Yeah, I think we absolutely do have to follow the money because there's been analysis done that says if you were to take away the budget cuts or the tax cuts rather, that favor the billionaires, if you were to take away those cuts, you could, without any cuts to spending at all, anywhere, still continue to fund all of these programs that they're threatening to make cuts. The math is, as they say, not mathing. What we're trying to do, what they're proposing to do, is to cut all of these programs in order to be able to, quote unquote, afford these $1 trillion of tax cuts for the super wealthy who have no need, who are not in need. And we're trying to balance this budget on the backs of people who are the most marginalized and the most vulnerable, the poor, low wealth, children. 90% of the people who are on Medicaid are special needs disabilities patients. Only about 2 to 3% of the people who are currently on Medicaid are actually what we would consider able-bodied. So we're layering vulnerability upon vulnerability. And any religious tradition is going to call for love of neighbor. Any religious tradition is going to call for protection of the most vulnerable among us. And so we really have to declare to the Congress that not just Christians, but Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, we all agree that this is an immoral way to treat the least of these in our society. And it violates what we say is the very promise of America. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness doesn't mean a whole lot if I don't have a job where I can make a living wage, where my education is dependent on the zip code in which I live, where I can't afford health care, when I have to make decisions about groceries versus medications that are life-saving. Certain medications going, cutting away the Biden era caps on the price of insulin, for example. I'm diabetic. I know that I would be seriously in trouble if I didn't have health care that helped me pay for my medication and insulin. So it's a moral issue. It's simply a moral issue. Again, this is not a partisan issue. It's not, as we always say, not right or left. It is right or wrong.
My dad often says that when you sharpen a pencil, you lose some good wood and some good lead, but as long as you get to the point. And you have 900 marches all across the country once a week. Tens of thousands of people are protesting, offering some resistance. This group's protesting that. This group protesting that. The only thing that we're left with at the end of these marches is that they're quantifiable as large, and people are upset. But here comes Moral Mondays. Here comes Repairers of the Breach. Here comes Teresa Hord Owens. Here comes William Barber saying, while all of this chaos is taking place, keep your eyes on the money. And we need to go to jail around the money, because they're shifting priorities from the poor legally through the congressional process to those who don't need that. And I don't think anyone has articulated that more clearly than you have.
Yeah. And there are a lot of people who, cross Repairers of the Breach. Dr. Albert Jackson, Shane Claiborne from Red Letter Christians was one of the people who was arrested yesterday, and many people know Shane. So it begins to show the breadth of the solidarity of people who are involved, not just mainline. There are historically Black denominations. There are more evangelically affiliated faith leaders. There are Jewish leaders and Muslim leaders who are all a part of this. And while we've seen many in the Black community talk about boycotting, right? The many companies who have moved away from their DEI policies, and it's sort of a both and, but we can't move towards just boycotting. By the time those boycotts have any impact, this legislation is passed. And it's a 10-year budget. That's the other thing. Why is it 10 years? That's unusual, as you know, to pass a congressional budget. So these cuts are being proposed for a 10-year period, which is even more devastating. So if it passes, it becomes a whole lot harder it has immediate impact, and it's a whole lot harder to reverse those actions when you've got something like that in place. So we have lots of, again, don't just be loud in the streets, be loud and right. And so in conjunction with this prayer is also the presentation of this data and these policy recommendations to show the impact of your actions. In my consulting days, when I worked for Ernst & Young or IBM, the role of a consultant, and really the role of the prophet, is to make sure that you understand the implications of your actions. You may have many choices before you, but once you understand the implications of your actions, and so in this prophetic work, we must show Congress the implications of what they're proposing to do, and call as many, Sojourners has been leading prayer all through Lent and through the month of April on how just prayer and calling on the Capitol lawn, calling for our legislators to have some moral courage, some moral courage, right versus wrong. And sometimes moral courage means that you take risks that have nothing to do with your reelectability, that you have, you're able to take risks so that you can live with yourself once you leave office. So There's some moral courage that's going to be required. I've heard news reports that there are 12 Republican congressmen who have written to Speaker Johnson to say they're really opposed to cuts on Medicaid. But we need more than that. We need people not just writing private letters. We need public voices holding people accountable for these actions. And we don't have a lot, this may go to the floor for vote in early June. We just don't have a lot of time. So we really need people to educate themselves.
Reverend, let me ask you this question. I've been reflecting upon institutions and what their primary purposes are in our society.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know a institution whose responsibility it is, indeed its obligation, is to reach out across the lines, across the cultural, political, and social differences, quite like the church.
Yeah.
No business wakes up in the morning saying, hey, we need to reach out to our opponent or the competition. But you wake up every morning and you see other people you see sheep that need to be brought into the fold. Are you sensing any buyer's remorse or voter's remorse on behalf of people who cast their votes last November and are now saying, hey, I'm open to the idea that I may have made a mistake and therefore I should be joining a moral crusade for change and no longer just a political reactionary crusade that has undermined the very fabric of the nation?
Yeah. Such an important point. The Disciples of Christ, the denomination about which, I have real experience, is 80% white, about 10, 11% Black, 6 to 7% Hispanic, and maybe 2 to 3% Asian Pacific Islander. So we are predominantly white, but probably a little more diverse than many mainline predominantly white denominations. Across the country, I'm seeing reports of our folks joining in these marches in all the cities where they're happening. There was one in Louisville as we were beginning our general board the first weekend in April, and our folks were traveling early to Louisville to be part of the meeting, but to be part of those protests and not wanting to leave out. I think we have the same kind of polarization in our church that others do. I have spoken with some people who have shown that kind of buyer's remorse. I do know there's growing anger. You can just see that from the reports we have of different congressional town halls, that people are angry and they want people to take action. I do think that many Christians still need to gird themselves up with biblical knowledge so that they can make that moral analysis based on their faith and what Jesus is teaching, as opposed to their own socioeconomic status in this country. So if you're still white in this country, the trick of the MAGA movement and others is to elevate, right? That solidarity around your whiteness, and for you to other immigrants, for you to other Black people, for you to other people who are not Christian in the same way that you're Christian. And if you're not grounded as a Christian or a person of whatever your faith, if you're not grounded in the texts and understandings of your faith tradition, you can be led astray by political things that will prey on whatever dimension of identity suits their purposes. And right now, to suit their purposes, it is really whiteness. They're not looking, and they're looking for people who want to be part of this framework of America. That's a very Christian nationalist framework that doesn't really privilege people who look like you and me. It doesn't privilege, they're attacking my alma mater, Harvard University. They're attacking that because somehow people feel that this liberal bastion of wokeness is going to make vulnerable those people whom they're trying to create this common identity that really has its heart whiteness. So they're not caring whether you're rich or poor. They're caring whether or not you can contribute to their power base. And as people of faith, if we can't critique that from a faith standpoint, we can be drawn down a lot of different rabbit holes. But this is a moral understanding, and we have to rely simply on what Jesus said: love your neighbor, feed those who are hungry, take care of those who are sick, bear witness to my love. That's the call of all Christians. And if you don't care about those who are less, who have less, then you're violating God's major commandments to love God and to love neighbor.
I do want to answer or ask this question about, it's one thing to be against Donald Trump. It's one thing again to be against conservatives in the Congress of the United States and their lack of an agenda to oppose 147 executive orders. It's another thing to be for something. And in this moment, I feel like of all of the protest, of all of the activity that's going on, and I listen to just about everything I can digest, it just seems that the road that you are taking, the road that Reverend Barber's taking, the road that the ecumenical groups that you are working with are taking seems to be something to be for. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, we'll be with none other than Reverend Teresa Hord Owens from the Disciples of Christ.
It's Afternoon Drive Time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. President Trump says he's not sure what Canada's prime minister wants to talk about when the two meet.
I guess he wants to make a deal. Everybody does.
Prime Minister Mark Carney is scheduled to speak with President Trump at the White House today. This will be Carney's first trip to Washington since he was elected last week. British Nigerian nursing student Elizabeth Tamilore Odunsi, 23 years old, was fatally stabbed in her Houston apartment just days before graduation. Her roommate, Chester Grant, was charged with her murder after an argument, reportedly over their cats. Grant was booked into jail after a failed suicide attempt and charged with murder. And Floyd Mayweather is suing Business Insider for $100 million, claiming defamation over a report that questioned a major real estate deal he was linked to. He says the article was false and damaging to his reputation. Business Insider has responded, calling the lawsuit meritless and vowing to defend its reporting. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Got issues with youth or high school sports? Positive Coaching Alliance can help. PCA, a national nonprofit, offers more than 1,000 free online resources for youth and high school sports coaches, parents, students, and administrators. Visit PCADevZone.org. Got issues with youth or high school sports? Positive Coaching Alliance can help. PCA, a national nonprofit, offers more than 1,000 free online resources for youth and high school sports coaches, parents, students, and administrators. Visit PCADevZone.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Second round action in the NBA playoffs resumes tonight. Indiana is at Cleveland for Game 2. Indiana has a 1-0 lead in the best of 7. Golden State and Minnesota meet up for Game 1 in their best of 7 in Minneapolis. Congratulations to Grambling State University legend Doug Williams, the first black quarterback to play in a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl. Williams was one of 6 people honored as a Louisiana legend at a gala award ceremony in Baton Rouge, sponsored by the Louisiana Public Broadcasting Corporation. Williams, who grew up in Zachary, Louisiana, led the Washington Redskins to a Super Bowl victory over Denver in 1988. Williams also is the first black quarterback to be chosen in the first round of the NFL draft. Williams was a first-round pick, number 17 of Tampa Bay in 1978. Williams, now 69, is a senior advisor for Magic Johnson's Washington Commanders. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. After nearly 20 years in Congress, he knows how to get at the issues that matter the most to you every day. He takes a deep dive into politics, social justice, and the stories that shape our community. This is where prominent people unpack perplexing problems. Unfiltered, unapologetic, unmissable. You're inside the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580.
You really about to do it?
40 acres in the mule. This is bigger than the music.
You really about to do it?
Yeah, they tried to rig the game, but you can't fake influence.
Who among us doesn't like black music? But Kendrick is right. This moment is so much bigger than music. These are serious times. We've got serious problems, and we need serious people who understand that slogans are not solutions. When you want substantial and sober analysis about things that matter to you and the ones you love, this is where you turn. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black. Baby! You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special today, Reverend Teresa Terry Hord Owens, is the General Minister and President of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada. She is the first person of color and second woman to lead the denomination. Reverend Terry Hord Owens' resume includes more than 20 years in corporate America, leading diverse teams in data management, in healthcare, and other industries before she entered the seminary. An active lay leader throughout her youth and adult life, Reverend Hord Owens has worked with children and youth ministries, taught Sunday school, Bible study, and Christian education departments, and worked to create drama ministries in several congregations. She's a graduate of Chicago Divinity School. Reverend Hord Owens served 15 years as the Dean of Students at her alma mater. There's so much more to her resume that I will get to before the end of the program. Reverend Hord Owens, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Oh, thank you so much. It's always good to be with you. Great conversation.
Thank you. So I want to raise this this question that it's one thing to be against every damn thing. Excuse my language, Reverend. It's against everything. But then to be for something. And what I'm gleaning from what you're saying is moral indignation for causes that are righteous. The ability, and I would not encourage this, by the way, for anyone to run into anyone's church and overturn the collection plate. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Leave that one for Jesus, right?
Exactly.
But the idea of moral indignation for the silence of those who could do something and should be doing something is a factor in, I guess, in the complication and perplexity of the moment. Your thoughts, Reverend?
Absolutely. I think it is, as you've noted, that's been the political dynamic, right? The whole conversation in the presidential campaign was not about whether one is just against a particular candidate, but what are you for in terms of the issues and things that matter. Let me frame a methodology that Repairs of the Breach has used, and which I've started to become an evangelist about. It's called prophetic listening. And in prophetic listening, there are just a couple of steps. First, as you listen to a policy proposal or an issue, ask yourself a couple of questions. One, who benefits? Who benefits from the proposal or the legislation or the issue? Second, who is hurt or harmed by it? Third, what do your own faith and moral traditions and texts have to say about this issue? And then once you've understood that, what's your moral agenda, or what's the steps or action that you're going to take as a particular person of faith, based again on your moral traditions, your scriptural traditions and texts. But if you ask yourself always who benefits and who's harmed, then you have your four there, because we want to protect the most vulnerable. And we have to be for those who are the least of these, and we have to be against those who are asking to benefit on the backs of people who already have too little. You're asking people who have too much already to further prop up that wealth on the backs of those who have too little. If you have too much, you can afford to contribute to a society where everyone has the opportunity to flourish and where everyone has enough. So the idea of being for, I really appreciated this idea of prophetic listening. And I try, when I respond in these moments about these issues, I try to use that framework to say who's benefiting, who's being harmed, what does my faith tradition and text have to say about it, and how, as a person of faith, can I then recommend a course of action? I believe that we as Christians are called, because Jesus has already come, right? Jesus was born, he lived, he died, he rose again, and he's coming back. But the Hebrew prophets tried to paint a picture for us of what the world would be like once the Messiah has come. And I think that's our obligation. Now that, since Jesus has come, if you're a Christian, and if you have a different faith tradition, your analysis may be a little different. But for me, because Jesus has come, how do I build this society that I believe is possible because Jesus has come? Because what Jesus has taught, what do I do to make that world come alive? I think that's our call and our obligation as Christians in this nation. Not
Sounds
to,
like
yeah,
sounds
not
like
to
the
blind
Charles, Charles Spurgeon question. What would Jesus do, right?
Yeah, exactly. But what's possible because of Jesus? You know, Walter Brueggemann, the Hebrew Bible scholar, says that the prophet's task is not just to critique the empire. The prophet's task is to paint a vision of what's possible because this man Jesus lived and died and rose again. So what's possible? And he says that if we can get inside God's imagination, which is like God's love, limitless, then we shouldn't be constrained by what's possible. But we have to work together to make those things possible. For Christians who say this isn't our task, I disagree. It's very much our task.
You know, I think about this this confrontation between moral tradition and political ritual. Our producer Gina Towns is focused on that at Princeton Theological Seminary, right? So you have this letter from a Birmingham jail where Dr. King is challenging clergywomen, and saying, listen, we've chosen religious tradition and ritual, but we have to do something. We have to make the faith active. We have to come from behind the pulpits, enter the streets, and make a difference. And then there are these others, these 4 students, for example, at North Carolina A&T, whose exhibit was almost removed from the Smithsonian last week, who sat in, and they had to make their faith work. They had to be called names. They had to be spat upon. They had to have things thrown at them, and yet they had to maintain their faith, their dignity, and how they proceeded mattered in changing the spirit energy and the national conscious of an egregious wrong that was taking place in our society. That's different than just protesting every Sunday.
Yes.
To get the conscience of the nation to move is a very different energy, Reverend.
Oh, absolutely. And I always say that if I have 2 planks in the platform of my leadership, one is I'll call it textual or scriptural literacy, because I think this applies to any faith tradition, not just Christian, and also spiritual practice, where you're engaged, however you contact or connect with the holy. If you're a person of faith, you have to have that reservoir built up so that when you look at the world, you're not just operating as a member of a club that happens to have a 501c3 designation, and you meet for some good music and maybe when people call sermons speeches or talks, it drives me nuts. But you've come to hear a good word, but you leave and you don't care anything else about the world around you. That's not what discipleship of Jesus Christ is about. It's really, really important that we ground ourselves as people of faith in making and recognizing that it's action that we take each and every day.
You know, I'm in this moment. I feel like a seminary student once again, and I think in this moment that it's easy. Well, it's not easy, but you can organize economic boycotts. but that doesn't mean that we're spiritually in it.
Right.
It just means we're not shopping there. It means we're withdrawing our
Right.
money. We've been offended by it. But it's another thing when we hold our heads up with dignity. And after we've sat in on a bus, we said, we're not going to ride your bus. This isn't just about not giving the bus company money. It's about my human dignity.
That's right.
I'd rather walk in the rain. I'd rather walk in the cold because my soul is motivated and inspired, and I'm strengthened by the activity of my faith and my Christianity in what I'm doing.
Right. And in terms of policy, it's like, how can I be a legislator and vote for policies that mean children will go hungry, that mean that people may die because we've not supported healthcare? How can I make those decisions as a human being that will mean utter devastation to so many lives? It's if you have no moral center, I can't appeal to you. But those of us who do must at least make that case.
I know we're going to be going to our break in just a moment, but I just wanted to raise this question because, you know, we have another large segment coming. How can we support your ministry and your work?
Well, I'm a big fan of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. You can go to disciples.org and learn a lot about the things that we are doing. I'm personally have a book that's coming out in July called Staying at the Table, Being the Church We Say We Are. And a lot of the things that you hear me talk about, I've tried to codify and put together sort of a theological and hopefully practical foundation and talk about some of the things that we're doing in the church. But I care a lot about this work and am grateful for the platform that I have as the general minister and president of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ to speak on certain issues. And I would also encourage people to go to breachrepairers.org and familiarize yourself with this high moral stakes report, which is there under the reports tab. I think that would help to further the work that I believe is so important. It's policy-based, but it's also faith-based, and it's prophetic and encouraging people to come to Moral Mondays. However you can plug into this work, find a way to do that and be visible.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, we're going to talk about policy with Teresa Howard Owens. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
We ask seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up.
Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number and put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month. If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Time is up. The IRS is in full collection mode for 2025, issuing liens, levies, and garnishments to anyone who has a past tax debt or unfiled tax returns. Don't wait till it's too late. Your paycheck and bank accounts are at risk of being seized. Call now and stop the collection process today. If you're living check to check, no matter how much you're making, you still may qualify for the Fresh Start programs offered by the IRS to reduce or even eliminate your tax debt. It's just a 5-minute call to get your options, and it's free. If you owe back taxes, have years of unfiled tax returns, under audit, have a wage or bank levy, or finally just want to sleep better, business or personal, call the experts at Republic Tax Relief while there's still time. A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, and tough. This veteran-owned company has the fight you need to take on the IRS. Don't go at it alone. The call is free. Call their hotline number now, 800-259-4546. That's 800-259-4546. Find out if you qualify today. Call 800-259-4546 or go to republictaxrelief.com.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. Every girl deserves a chance to shine. That's the belief behind Forgiving for Living, Inc. Since 1999, this organization has been empowering at-risk girls ages 13 to 18, helping them overcome behavioral and mental health challenges. Founder Wendy Gladney's personal journey inspired the mission to give girls hope and purpose through the power of forgiveness. Through their ambassador program, workshops, and annual conference, Forgiving for Living has touched over 3,000 young lives, providing mentoring, life skills, training, and tools for building self-esteem and confidence. You can make a difference. Visit forgivingforliving.org to donate, volunteer, become a mentor, or find help for a young girl in need. Forgiving for Living, Inc., building brighter futures for young girls. Visit forgivingforliving.org today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, where my very special guest has been Reverend Teresa Ord Owens, the General Minister and President of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in the United States and in Canada. Reverend Ord Owens, I have a couple of quick questions, and then, of course, I want to let you end us on our word of hope. The first of which is, what policies do you believe we can unite around that can bring people together to make a difference as soon as 2026?
I think one of the first priorities, and this is the priority that we have working on Moral Mondays and with Repairs of the Breach and all of the Disciples of Christ, the United Church of Christ, Sojourners, Red Letter Christian, the National Council of Churches, all of the partner and anchor organizations are focused on the issues in this high moral stakes report. So the first is to fight against this $2 trillion cuts that are being proposed to Medicaid, SNAP, Head Start. We know that Medicaid is under siege. So policy priority is avoiding any cuts to Medicaid, which could affect the health coverage of 36 million people. Most of those folks, older adults and people with disabilities. So Medicaid is an important policy issue. And this budget right now, I think, is priority one in terms of our policy. It's going to impact housing. They're going to slash federal rental assistance for housing. And that'll put millions of people at risk of being unhoused and an even worse situation in terms of housing affordability. You combine that with where interest rates are right now in the housing market, and any cuts to federal housing assistance will be devastating. And without even dramatic cuts to other areas, Social Security and Medicare, the fact that they're even in the conversation is at risk. 68 million seniors, millions of disabilities. I'm getting close to the point where I'm going to have to sign up for Medicare. We all are, right? So this is getting really real, right? It's getting really real for many of us. Minimum wages, policies that suppress the minimum wage. The minimum wage hasn't been raised since 2009. We have a weakened sense of protection for labor protections and union activity. But things like $230 billion being proposed to the SNAP program. Right? Food for children of poor and low income families. $230 billion is what's being proposed.
I sure hope when this vote comes down that we don't lose any Democrats to voting for President Trump's budget. I mean, if we lose them, I sense a civil war within the Democratic Party, and I know that we're not partisan here, but we do have a front to be against this budget, and we do have expectations for where we have been casting our votes. And if we lose 5, 10, or 20 of them to the president's budget, I think I'll just be floored. I may have to take a vacation from the radio to get myself together again. But I want to ask this question. Reverend Barber wrote the afterword to my book, A More Perfect Union. He wrote the foreword, I believe, to your new book, Staying at the Table. We are going to have you back to talk about that in larger and with more appropriate time. Share with us your thoughts about staying at the table.
Well, staying at the table, in my tradition, the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, the founding theological principle back in the early 19th century was that no other person could determine whether or not you should have access to communion. And so the idea of an open table, disciples are known for having communion every Sunday, but it's not the frequency that matters. It's the fact that we believe that table is, first of all, not ours, it's the Lord's table. And so all should be welcome. So you'll never be in a disciples congregation where anyone will ask you, are you Christian? Are you baptized? Are you this? Are you that? You're free and welcome to partake of that. That for me is really a metaphor for God's community, right? And the community to which God is inviting all of us to participate. And so if we can welcome you, I have to be able to not only welcome you to the meal, but to welcome you to this full community.
I need to press that a little bit. Are you saying, and I am absolutely on your side, that non-Christians can take communion and share at the table? I mean, what a novel idea. That is so unritualistic in Christian traditions.
And it's just the very idea that we just don't ask you the question, right? We don't we don't make it's called a test of fellowship is what people call. We don't have these tests of fellowship. You can go to our website. The most that you would find is the preamble to our governance document, the design, which is a theological statement, but says only that we profess that Jesus is the Christ, Son of the living God, and proclaim him Lord and Savior of the world. We don't have any other doctrinal requirements to be a part of our communities. That said, we do still have communities and congregations that will that don't believe in ordaining women or don't welcome LGBTQ persons. But I'm calling the church to not only embrace what we mean by this open table, but to develop the idea of what it means to stay there. We have this tension of being able to walk together even when we disagree. We allow this broad spectrum for theological diversity, but it takes a particular set of skills and a particular commitment to that to be able to stay at the table. And even if you're one of the groups that are being ostracized or oppressed, sometimes your seat at the table is thorny, and you may make a decision that I'm going to stay and be here because I don't get to decide who the people are on either side of me or across from me. But we all, I think, a commitment to saying this is God's table. And if we want to model this open table, this limitless love, we got to figure out how we stay there. But we first have to be committed to who we believe God is, this notion of limitless love. Because if that's true, then we recognize we actually, and John Lewis actually said, we don't have the right to deny the divine spark of the divine spark that is in all humanity. We don't have the right to reject humans. And that very much aligns with, I think, our theological position as a denomination. And I just simply want to call the church to be the church we say we are. We don't need a lot of extra words, mantras, strategic statements, all these things. We just have to be who we've said we are, whom Jesus said the church needs to be. And that to me is a very inclusive community.
In a real sense, your faith makes you political. Your politics don't determine your faith. You're trying to bring your full faith in what you say, what you believe, what you pray, who you worship, to the commonhood of all persons and all of humanity. And you're trying to be consistent right there.
Absolutely. And
that's why you can absolutely do it with love, right? I mean,
and if you do that,
enemy with love. I'm sorry.
I think that's the most powerful form of evangelism we can have, is to show people that this Jesus we profess cares about them, cares whether they eat, cares whether they can live and flourish, and that we are willing as their neighbors to work for a world where they can flourish, because this is what Jesus teaches. And this is what all of our religious traditions really care about. So for me, the work of justice is evangelism writ large.
We have about a minute and 30 seconds before the end of our show. Reverend Teresa Hordens, bless us with a word of hope.
I think as long as we have a new day, there's air to breathe. And those of us who are Christians who would say, if we believe in this God of limitless love and limitless hope and limitless power, then there continues to be hope. We are so concerned about day-to-day concerns, but if people will engage and really understand that we all have to take this moment and take our fate, both as people of faith, but also as citizens in the United States of America. If you're a member of a church, a member of a mosque, a member of a synagogue, and you're a U.S. citizen and you can vote, you have the right to participate and to hold your elected officials accountable for policies that will benefit your community. And we should all be outraged, but we should all have this hope that does not disappoint. The Bible says hope does not disappoint us. So no matter what happens, I still believe that God allows that there's going to be a new day, a next day, and God is always able to do far beyond all that we can imagine.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You've been listening to Reverend Terry Hord Owens. You've been listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. When we come forward, we're going to keep hope alive. Until next time.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.